introducing what you're doing in addition to the chemie degree.
Welcome back to Candid Chemie. I'm Libby.
I'm Jude.
I'm Shruti.
And I'm Julia. And today we're going to be talking about classes we take outside of our chemical engineering classes and how you can add double majors and minors.
I guess we can start by those of us who are doing a minor or a double major, just introducing what you're doing in addition to the chemie degree.
Yeah, I guess I can start. So I'm double majoring currently in government. I'm not completely sure if I'm going to continue graduating with the second major. And then I'm minoring or getting a certificate in the environment and sustainability.
Yeah, I'm minoring in business right now. And then I have a certificate in scientific computation and data sciences as an option.
I'm personally not getting anything. I thought about multiple things. I took like one or two classes to get the business minor, and then I took a class to get a teaching certificate, but I'm not going to complete either of them.
I am the same as Libby. I'm doing nothing in addition to my chemie degree, which is also okay. But yeah, I haven't even taken a class that isn't non-chemie yet. I think for me, it was just like, I felt like I was being overwhelmed with the chemical engineering enough, so I didn't want to add anything on. And I figured if I wanted to take a class that interests me, I could do that later on once I have more time in my schedule and not necessarily have to complete everything to get a minor or a certificate.
Yeah, just to echo like what Jude said, like the only reason I think I'm doing or currently have the double major minors because it's things that I'm really interested in. So, and I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't really interested because I don't think it really adds if it's not classes that are going to be like really interesting to you.
I think we're all in these positions because we came in with credit, right? Obviously, we had different kinds of AP credit and college credit that have allowed us to kind of have extra space in our degrees. And we've utilized it in different ways. Like for me personally, I've taken some just different classes. Like I took a PE course and it's been a lot of fun. It's been different. And then I was also able to kind of investigate teaching and see what that was like, if it was something that I would be interested in if I didn't end up enjoying chemie. So I think there's value in, you don't have to take these classes with like a minor in mind. You can just take fun classes and like never have the stamp on your diploma that says like, oh, I also had this. Just taking classes can be valuable like in and of itself.
Yeah, and even if you don't get like that certificate or minor or double major, you can always say like, oh, I did take a class in X and like in like a cover letter or in an interview. And I think that like can help you as well. Like even if you don't have like that whole certificate done.
I also feel like sometimes people put too much emphasis like on having their certificate or minor written down because I know like with computer science and stuff like that specifically, some people will be like, oh, I have to get a certificate in this because I want a job in CS. But then I also know lots of people who'll just learn it on their free time. And that's like maybe even more valuable to an employer or someone in the future than like necessarily taking the classes at UT.
Yeah, I think doing like declaring a certificate or like a double major can also be helpful if you don't like want to do a super traditional chemie path. So I know that I haven't been applying to jobs that are super traditional. So I kind of use those like certificates and minors as saying like, this is how I can kind of fit into this position that is maybe not like such a typical chemie job, but showing how like each of these pieces kind of fit together. So it can be helpful in that sense, but like it's definitely not necessary.
Do y'all want to talk about like why you chose to seek out like the minor certificate that you did?
Yeah, I guess I could start. So before I started like applying to colleges, or I guess while I was applying, I kind of wasn't necessarily applying to only chemie programs. So I had a couple of business ones sprinkled in there because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like a lot of people, I didn't know what chemical engineering was, and I didn't necessarily trust the people who were telling me, oh, just do it, because I was like, I don't really know what this is. I need time to figure it out. So I always had business kind of like in my mind, but also at the same time, I didn't really know what business was either, like what it would entail, like majoring in it. Um, so obviously, like I ended up going to UT for chemical engineering, but I was still kind of interested in the business aspect. And I still kind of knew that I didn't want to do, I guess, traditional chemical engineering, and that like at the very least in the future, maybe if I did have a traditional chemical engineering position, I'd maybe want to go back and get like my MBA for like a manager type position. And so that's kind of how I started doing the business minor. And I've enjoyed it so far. I think it's kind of a nice break from the chemie classes. And most of the classes, like I can see myself kind of applying them in the future, like accounting. It's kind of just a useful thing to know. And then I'm in business law right now, and that's actually pretty interesting as well. There's just like a lot of things that are applicable, even for me if I went into like an engineering type job, just to know those kind of things, like know my rights for working with a company. And I just think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next then. So the reason I was kind of looking into other things at the beginning is because I did have a lot of credit. So I was just like, I have this extra time, might as well use it. And I'm honestly the type of person that won't really like Shruti was saying before, like if you can learn stuff on your own time, but like that's just not like I need to kind of be in a classroom setting to really push myself to learn new things. So I knew that if I wanted to branch out, I would probably, the best way for me to do it was probably like to add these certificates or double major. So the reason I chose the environment sustainability one is because I am really passionate about that and I want to pursue a career in that direction. And the thing that I really liked about the certificate over like majoring specifically in like environmental science or like double majoring in that or switching my major to that or like environmental engineering or sustainability studies is the certificate you can take classes in like scientific part of it and like the social part of it, which I really like. It's one of the certificates at UT called like bridging disciplines. So you're encouraged to really take a wide variety of like within different disciplines relating to the same topic because climate change is a really like cross-disciplinary topic. So I really enjoy that. Like I've taken environmental law, which was really interesting. And like I learned stuff in that, like I would never pick up an environmental law textbook on my own time. So being forced to do that in class, I'm really glad I did that. And then for the government part of it, I'm just really interested in that as well. And again, I'm writing a paper right now about like voter suppression, and I'm kind of tying it into climate change for my specific paper. And I would have never looked into that and like dug into the data on that without having that class structure. And it's kind of cool to do both majors because a lot of the government majors in my class don't have like the Excel background or any of that to like really utilize the data. But I feel like I kind of have like a leg up in the fact that like we had an Excel class for chemie. So I think it's just, if you are the type of person that needs to learn, if you're going to learn new things, you need to be in the classroom, then I would recommend like adding that major, double major or minor to really push yourself to actually do it.
I think any class outside of chemie can be very helpful. I feel like our degree plan is very technical and they've done their best, I would say, to sprinkle in some non-technical courses. Like you have to take a VAPA and you have to take a communications course, but I really don't think it's enough. I don't think we learn enough about those kinds of things. And for me personally, like teaching definitely broadened my communication skills, I would say, of like communicating with kids is kind of the most difficult. They're the most difficult people to communicate with. And developing those skills, I would say, have helped me like a lot in day-to-day life as well.
And I already kind of mentioned this, but for me, I was looking into maybe doing an economics type of minor, but then I just decided if I want to do economics, I'll just take a class here or there. I felt like for me, adding a minor or a double major would just add unnecessary stress because then I would feel obligated to then complete it. So for me, I'm probably just going to take random classes my last year and a half. Maybe an art history class, maybe like something very random like studio art if I can even get into that. Just whatever I can get my hands on, really. That is the opposite of chemical engineering. would be good. And something Libby mentioned were like VAPAs and UGS classes. Those are like visual and performing arts and then undergraduate study classes. So if you come to UT, you have to take one of each of those. And I recommend doing something like random for it because it's a class that you would never take otherwise. For me personally, my UGS was about vampires. So I got to read like Dracula and like all these creepy books, and it was just so random. The professor is so eccentric, and those are just people you would never ever get to meet in the Kimmy degree plan. So I highly recommend doing something, maybe not the thing that's like, oh, I'm smart, so I'll take the UGS that's about math. Like, do something crazy. Take that opportunity.
Yeah, another nice thing about not really declaring a certificate or minor or et cetera is that if you do like want to just take a class, you can take it pass fail. So that means that you can get like a D, I think it's down to like a D minus in it, and it's just as a pass on your transcript. It doesn't affect your GPA at all. So if you're just like looking to learn something and but not have to spend a ton of time on it, that is like another option if you don't have to count it towards something. And it does still count to your hours if you like to be a full-time student, if you do take a class pass fail.
Yeah, that's especially useful if you find a minor where you're like, oh, this looks really interesting, but then they have some classes that you don't want to almost waste your time on. There's no reason to declare that minor because you can still take most of the classes. Sometimes there will be some restrictions, but just go talk to the advisors. Like the advisors, I feel like are some of the few people that truly do care. Like specifically in some different majors. Like I feel like they are looking out for those students and they want you to like do better and to maybe explore something else. Like they want to help you explore something else and see what else you're interested in.
Yeah, and another thing on that note is like if you declare certificate, minor, double major, you don't have to complete it. So like that's also like it's not like you're bound to that once you declare it. Do we want to talk about how we like declared things and how what that process looks like? Because I feel like it can be pretty different for what you're trying to get a certificate, minor, double major in on that process.
Yeah, so I guess mine was pretty simple and basic. So right now I have two like minors or certificates on my like degree plan, I guess. So for the business one, it was pretty simple. You just go to their website, fill out an application, and then someone from the business office approves it. And then for the other one, it's a certificate. I just thought that it would be a good thing to like get that on the degree plan in case if I wanted to do it, like it would be there. It would just be like a little bit easier to not complete it rather than adding it later. Because I've heard that sometimes that's not really allowed. They don't really like you adding a certificate kind of late in the degree plan. So for that one, I just emailed one of my advisors and asked for approval, and that was basically it.
Yeah, for the process it took for me. So for the environment sustainability certificate, that one you have to do an application. And I think you have to write an essay about like, since it's like in the bridging disciplines program, just like you have to write a pretty lengthy essay on like how, like why you want it, how you would use it, what classes you're planning to take, and like how those fit together. And they help you out with writing that. I think you have to go to like an advising session and they'll like give you tips on like how you can improve your essay like an advisor will. And then at the end of the semester, a faculty panel for each of the certificates in the bridging disciplines program will approve people. And it kind of, the one for environment sustainability is basically just if you should like have a demonstrated interest, they'll pretty much let you in. And like you definitely, if you put effort into your essay and have a demonstrated interest, but some of them they're kind of competitive to get into. Luckily the one I went for wasn't super competitive, but that's something to keep in mind. And then the government major was honestly really, really easy to add. So what I had to do was go to an info session, fill out a form, and just go turn in that form and like sign my name on a piece of paper, and then it showed up as a second major. That can be, it definitely is very dependent on the major for how you can add like a double major. Some of them you have to apply. And I think it depends on the popularity of the major and the difficulty of the major on what the process is to get into it. But government was super easy. and wasn't going to add a ton of like hours to my other degree.
And I don't know if this is correct, but I'm pretty sure you cannot double major in engineering. You can have 2 engineering majors. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, just something to be aware of. I don't know why you would, but you can't do that.
Yeah, I think a way to kind of get around that though is like you can pick a track within your major usually that kind of like puts you toward like a certain other major. So like for chemie, we can have a track in like bio. So if you're like interested in like the bio side of chemie, you can do that.
And I think you could even probably take another engineering elective in a different, you might have to get approval or something, but I can't imagine it being super, super difficult if you wanted to take like a MECD class. I'm sure you
The
could.
hardest part of getting into like other majors classes is this, that they just fill up quickly. If it's a required class or if it's like a fun elective that a lot of people want to take, you could very well not get in the whole 4 years you're here, because freshmen mechanical engineers would have preference even over a senior chemical engineer. Like you don't get, just because you're older doesn't mean you get like preference over the younger people as if they're in the major. So that's something to keep in mind. Of some of the more fun classes in other engineering majors you probably won't get into, but you can always try.
Or you
Yeah.
could do a Maymester.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Julia.
Oh no, you're good. I was just gonna go back to the point Libby made about talking to advisors. So like even if you think you might not be able to get in a class, like just like take a shot and talk to the advisor for that major, and they might save a spot for you, or you never know until you ask. So I don't think it hurts at all to ask an advisor or ask somebody, because the worst they can say to you is no. They're not going to do anything else.
Exactly. And they're always nice about it. They're always like, oh, I understand it's a really interesting class, but I'm sorry, it fills up very quickly and we can't do that. And then that's it. You go on with your day.
Another option I know about, you don't necessarily have to take classes like for credit or even pass fail. So some professors are nice, I guess, like in pre-corona times and maybe like now too, and they let you audit their class. So that's where you just kind of go into class and you like listen to their lectures and stuff, and you can still learn on your own time, but you don't have to do any of the assignments or anything. But it's definitely like more of a professor by professor basis, where you'd want to reach out to the professor and ask if that's something they're okay with.
Should we talk about some of the electives, like chemie degree plan electives you plan on taking or have already taken?
Sure. Oh goodness, I think I've taken 2 chemie electives, not totally sure. I took design for environment my freshman year, and then currently in entrepreneurship, and they're kind of very opposite ends of the spectrum, but they've both been pretty interesting. I would say the majority of the chemie electives look fairly interesting. It's a matter of like, do they conflict with a core requirement? And are they only offered in the spring or only offered in the fall? And it's just kind of challenging to get into those sometimes, but design for environment was a lot. I found it really interesting. It started out like very oil and gas heavy, and then we kind of moved into chemistry and more renewables. And I don't know, that whole class was something that, being a freshman, it was almost my first introduction into like what a chemical engineer really does. And I found that to be very valuable going further in my plan.
Yeah, I think the only elective I've taken so far is entrepreneurship. So kind of in the same boat. It's kind of an interesting thing to look at when you're like, it's very like opposite of what our normal chemical engineering classes are. So it's kind of cool to see that. And then another option to like take a different elective is if you do a semester abroad, which I'm planning on doing next semester. And they're pretty lax about approving things that like at other universities that can be counted as electives. So you could take classes that you wouldn't necessarily be able to take here that would count toward your degree if you're interested in that.
And I think another opportunity to kind of do something that isn't predetermined for you is you get a chemistry elective. In all the state, you teach outreach, which was really fun and very different from your typical sitting in class and just taking notes type of course. That's another option. And you can choose a lab as well, a chemistry lab. So that's another opportunity to do something that you're not forced to do. You have some freedom.
And also for like the engineering electives as well, they're not all specifically chemical engineering or even engineering in general. Like I'm pretty sure one of the electives I'm using is like economics from AP credit. But you can like get it from a wide range of sources. Like I'm pretty sure there's biochem in there, like genetics, so if that's stuff you're interested in. There's probably some math courses or something like that that you could take. So it's like semi-structured, but with a little bit of freedom.
I think the only rule is you have to take like two of your 4 electives have to be engineering, and one of those engineering has to be chemical engineering. But besides that, you're like pretty free to explore your options and see like everything that they have to offer.
Yeah, I think kind of the point of all of this is just to say that if you come with a lot of credit, you can really explore. But even if you don't, there are ways to explore within the chemical engineering major to see things that you're interested in or take classes that aren't necessarily like your normal chemie classes.
Okay, well, I think that was very good, ladies. So thank you so much for listening. And if you have anything you want to add or something we can talk about, please email us at texasyouchew@gmail.com. Thank you. Bye-bye.